Are you okay?
Are you okay? I see your eyes watering.
No, mine are glossy from alcohol. Yours are glossy from tears. There's a difference.
Sweet.
Kylie Jenner went on Khloe's podcast expecting to talk about normal sister stuff, but instead she ended up revealing more about herself than she probably planned. And it wasn't one big dramatic moment. It was a slow pattern of comments, reactions, and small confessions that added up to something you don't normally see from her. The episode gives you a clearer picture of where Kylie actually is in her life right now, emotionally, mentally, and even professionally. And fans picked up on things she didn't say as much as what she did. So, let's break down what really happened and why this episode matters more than people think. The first thing that stands out is how quickly the conversation turns unexpectedly emotional. Kylie remembers this tiny childhood moment where Khloe was teaching her how to hold up her fingers for her birthday. It's not a dramatic story, but it hits her out of nowhere. She gets visibly emotional and tries shrugging it off as the martinis, but the reaction is genuine. What makes it interesting is not the memory itself, but what it shows about where Kylie is mentally. She's clearly more reflective than usual, more sensitive than usual, and she's not trying to hide it. That alone already sets the tone for the rest of the episode, because every answer after that becomes a little more revealing. A few minutes later, she talks about losing Norman, the dog people online used to obsess over. The "Where's Norman" meme has been around for years, and Kylie finally addresses it directly.
I didn't think that I was preparing myself because he was about to turn 13 and I knew that I didn't have as much time with him, but
how crazy
I
with
was
the King
like,
Kylie anniversary of
I
it all.
know. It's
I
like
know.
he made it to King Kylie.
She explains he was almost 13 and passed recently, and it was the pit of her week. For someone who keeps her emotional life extremely private, the way she talks about Norman is striking. She's not performing sadness. She's just stating it plainly. It's one of the first times in a long time where she's publicly processed something personal instead of brushing past it. And that becomes a pattern throughout the episode. She's not holding the shield up the way she usually does. But the comment that really surprised people comes when she says she feels 45 years old. Not in a jokey way. She genuinely says it like it makes complete sense to her. And it actually does when you look at the context she gives. She has 2 kids. She has a business that just hit its 10-year mark. She's been famous since elementary school, and she carries a workload that would burn out most adults twice her age. People tend to think of Kylie as permanently in her early 20s, frozen in influencer youth. Hearing her admit she feels 2 decades older immediately reframes how she views her own life. And honestly, the way she says it doesn't sound like she's being dramatic. It sounds like someone who's been running at full speed for too long. That's where the deeper explanation comes in. Kylie admits she stays in a safe box now. She used to try things, experiment, put herself out there, but eventually the constant judgment wore her down. She says it plainly, she doesn't share everything anymore because she doesn't want to be torn apart for it. This quiet confession explains a lot of the last several years of Kylie's public presence. The quieter social media phases, the filtered posts, the polished but limited public appearances. She essentially admits that the scrutiny changed her behavior, and she's not saying it with bitterness, just honesty. It's a level of self-awareness people don't usually get from her.
What are the 2 things that you're most afraid of?
Career-wise,
or at that
acting and
time?
singing.
Okay, and you did both this
Yeah.
year.
Then, unexpectedly, she shifts to talking about acting, and this part gives insight into how she operates privately. She says she was terrified to take her role in The Substance and that she actually went to Kim for coaching. Kim, of all people, was the one she trusted to help her work through the fear, not Kris, not Kendall, not Khloe. Kim. Kylie says Kim listened to her read lines, gave her confidence, and told her she could do it. The reason this matters is because it reveals a side of their dynamic fans don't normally see. Kim is usually framed as the polished, strategic entrepreneur sister, not the emotionally supportive one. Hearing Kylie describe Kim as a source of reassurance shifts the narrative of how the sisters function behind the scenes. But the heaviest moment of the episode comes when Khloe talks about True's fever, 107, and how months later, True lost 50 to 60% of her hair. Kylie immediately connects it to Stormi having a similar experience. They talk about trying to stay calm so their daughters wouldn't panic, and it's one of the most grounded, real conversations they've had publicly. No glam, no business, no branding, just two moms dealing with something scary and unexpected. Kylie relates strongly, and you can tell motherhood is one of the few areas where she doesn't filter anything. Her voice shifts, her priorities shift, the tone of the entire conversation shifts. This leads into a deeper look at the Kylie-Khloe relationship that fans rarely get. Kylie explains that Khloe was basically her second parent growing up. She had her social media passwords, enforced consequences, monitored what she was doing online. Kylie even says she never lies to Khloe because Khloe would instantly know. It reframes their dynamic completely. People always talk about Kim and Khloe being the closest, or Kendall and Kylie being the duo. But this episode makes it clear that Kylie leans on Khloe in ways she doesn't lean on anyone else. It also adds context to why she gets emotional so easily in this episode, because she's talking to the person who's known her the longest and the most honestly. The discussion then shifts into boundaries, and this is where Kylie sounds the most self-assured. She talks about protecting her kids' privacy, limiting who sees what, and not feeling the need to pop out the way she used to. She even jokes about muting the family group chat if she's not in the mood for the drama. The most important part of this section is how matter-of-fact she is about all of it. She's not defensive. She's not apologizing. She's simply explaining that she prioritizes her peace over optics, something the public rarely credits her for. Knowing she's stepping back by choice, not because she's checked out, gives new context to the version of Kylie fans see today. But then, the tone shifts again. Out of nowhere, Kylie says she has never been happier. She says her life is aligning in ways she didn't expect, and she feels more content than ever. It's a sharp contrast to everything she said earlier. Feeling old, feeling exhausted, staying in a safe box. But it's not contradictory. It actually rounds out the picture. She's not overwhelmed because she's spiraling. She's overwhelmed because she's growing. And she's handling it in a way that feels more grounded than she ever has. This version of Kylie doesn't sound chaotic or lost, she sounds settled. The episode ends with a look at how she views her 30s, and this part is surprisingly optimistic. She talks about her kids getting older, she talks about new goals for Kylie Cosmetics. She even talks about acting again, and going back to the studio just because she enjoys it. She doesn't frame any of it as pressure or expectations. She frames it as things she wants to try without worrying about judgment. Considering everything she admitted earlier, the fear, the criticism, the burnout, this shift toward wanting to take risks again explains why so many fans connected to this episode. By the end, you aren't left with some dramatic revelation about Kylie Jenner. You're left with a clearer understanding of her as a person. Someone who's grown up fast, taken on a lot, retreated for her own protection, and is slowly stepping back into being curious and ambitious again. And that comes across more authentically here than it has anywhere else. Because if this episode proves anything, it's that the version of Kylie people think they know isn't the version she actually is anymore.